create margin and space in our life so that we can enjoy what God has given us. Boundaries. Do you know a fire, the fact that we have fire in humanity really is a blessing. It gives warmth, it cooks meals. I appreciate fires. We've got a little fire pit in the back of our house, and on these summer days that we have, oftentimes when the sun goes down, we have the cool of the evening, we will get some marshmallows, and we'll go outside with our boys, and we'll put the marshmallows on the ends of some sticks, and we will start a little fire in the fire pit. We'll roast those marshmallows and put them in between two graham crackers with some Hershey's chocolate, and we'll have some delicious s'mores in the evening. Anybody been blessed by the anointing of s'mores? We'll do that with our boys. We appreciate that fire. We love fire. You appreciate it for whatever reasons you use it. The problem is not with the fire. It's if the fire gets out of that boundary that it's supposed to be in. The same thing that we just enjoyed becomes something that actually wreaks havoc in our life and destroys us from the inside out. And some of us can look back in our lives or in our ministries and we see smoke everywhere. And we're wondering where this devastation has come from. Could it be that you and I have misplaced the boundaries that God would put in our life? And that the very things He has given us to enjoy are now overriding us, consuming us, and keeping us from being what God would have us to be in that particular area. This is no better exemplified, and there's a principle I want to share with you that I think will be a challenge to you as it has to me. This is no better exemplified than with the children of Israel. Because these people, for nearly 400 years, were trained in the ways of slavery. They knew nothing other than continuous activity and continuous work. They had to constantly be attended to by the taskmasters that Pharaoh put over them, according to Exodus chapter 1, that they were not just laboring, but their labor was bitter and rigorous. It was absolutely continuous, constant, 24 hours a day. They did not know rest. But after 10 miracles straight from the hand of God through the prophet Moses, He delivered them out of Egypt, and He took them on a journey through the wilderness so that they could go into the land of promise, Canaan, the promised land, the land flowing with milk and honey, God's provision, God's protection, God's presence among them and with them for the rest of their days. But He did not just lift them up out of Egypt and throw them into Canaan. He took them through a process in the wilderness. And the wilderness was designed for a very specific reason, because He did not want people who were just physically free, but had not had their minds transformed so that they knew how to walk as free men and women. The wilderness was designed to work Egypt out of them. The wilderness was designed so that He could retrain them, refocus them, so He gave them many gifts. One of the many gifts was that He gave them manna, He gave them quail, He gave them water, and He gave them what we were so brilliantly taught on yesterday evening by Pastor Prince. He gave them the law, and at the time they would not have seen these principles necessarily, some of them as gifts, but some of them placed boundaries around what they could have miscued and misused, so that the things He had given them to enjoy, the manna, the quail, the water, those things could have spiraled out of control. Without the boundaries, they would become enslaved again to the very things He had given them to enjoy. And while you and I are no longer bound under the law, as again we were so brilliantly shared with yesterday evening, there are some principles that we can uncover. In the New Testament, there are some principles that we can uncover under the new covenant of Jesus Christ that will keep us from being enslaved ever again. Do you know Galatians 5:1 says that it is for freedom that you've been made free? It is for freedom that I've been made free. Therefore, we have not only the responsibility, but a great privilege to stand firm in the power of the Holy Spirit and not be ever subject again to any yoke of slavery. Not just sin, not just hindrances, not just ungodly habits or proclivities in our life. That's what we most often think of when we think of slavery in our life. But could it be that we've just become enslaved to the stuff that God has given us to enjoy? The things that are lawful for you, the things that you can be a part of and engage in, those things can become bondage to you without the boundaries that God put in place. And so in Deuteronomy chapter 5, I want to read a few verses to you. A few verses that call out one of the laws that was given to the children of Israel. And then I just want to show you for a few moments how the principle unfolds from this law and is still applicable to you and I under the new covenant of Jesus Christ. Deuteronomy chapter 5, verse 12 through 15. Let me read it to you. Observe the Sabbath day to keep it holy, as the Lord your God commanded you. 13. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work. But the seventh day is a Sabbath unto the Lord. In it you shall not do any work. Verse 15. And you shall remember, here it is, that you were a slave in the land of Egypt. And the Lord your God brought you out of there by a mighty hand and by an outstretched arm. Therefore, the Lord your God commanded you to observe the Sabbath day. Do you know of all of the commandments, it is this one that God spent the most words on? This commandment took up more space, more verses than any of the other commandments. There was more detail spent in describing to the children of Israel this particular command. That is because this one was a gift to God's people. It was a boundary. They would not have seen it as a gift at the time because they, like us, would always tend to overdo with their slave mentality, always overdo, overextend, commit themselves to a process. But this boundary at the time they did not see as a gift. But even when you go over to the New Testament, it clearly says in Mark chapter 2 that the Sabbath was a gift given by God to mankind. It is a margin, breathing room that God has given you and I so that we can experience the freedom that God has come to give. I want to just share with you 3 simple principles that if you will incorporate them in your ministry life, in your family life, in your work life, your career life, if I will, then you and I will see transformation. We will be able to operate in our lives not from a place of exhaustion. We'll be able to operate from a place of rest and filling as we have spent time with God.